Well, on Thursday, voters here and across the European Union will be going to the polls in elections to the European Parliament. Originally, of course, the UK was not due to take part, but the delay to Brexit means they definitely will be taking place. And in the run-up to the elections, we here on BBC News are talking to all the main UK parties. We're putting your questions to them. Now, today, it's the turn of UKIP. Richard Braine is one of the party's candidates for Thursday's vote, and he's kindly standing in for his party leader, Gerard Batten, who was originally due to be appearing in this slot. So thank you very much indeed for stepping in and talking to us.
Thank you very much.
So we're asking you our viewers' questions, and I'll kick off straight away with one from Tony Thompson from Stockport via email, saying if the last vote had been 51-49 to remain, the last referendum vote, you would have said, not quite yet, one more push. Or would you have said, we'll pack up and disband the party for 25 years, then try again? So in other words, if the vote had been to remain, wouldn't you have kept fighting for another referendum and then another referendum?
I think the important point to remember is that the EU has spent something like 160 million euros in British institutions to promote Remain. All of the main parties supported Remain. All of the major institutions supported Remain. Universities, the CBI, the IMF, everybody, even Obama was flown over as a sort of quid pro quo to tell us all to vote Remain. And so the amount of ordnance stacked up against us during that vote was absolutely enormous. And I'm trying to answer the question.
Okay.
So the 52% of a win for Leave, more than 1 million people in the margin there, is actually a huge victory for Leave because of the odds that were stacked against us. And by the way, don't forget that the Stronger In campaign spent far more than the Vote Leave campaign did.
But with respect, the question from Tony Thompson is, if the last referendum had been, the result had been Remain, would you have then campaigned for another referendum to try and overturn that?
I've never thought about it.
You haven't thought about it? Not once?
No, there's never been a need to. We did win, and therefore the leaving the EU needs to be delivered. That's the fact of the matter.
A lot of viewers are asking this question, what really is the point of UKIP? Because the Brexit Party, led by your former leader, Nigel Farage, doing what appears to be pretty well in the polls on, I think, around mid-30s%. That's about 10 times better than you're doing, which is on about 3%.
Yeah, that's correct. Of course, the actual result on polling day is another matter, and the polls have been notoriously unreliable for quite a long time now, and they've frankly become, it seems to me, a tool for trying to manipulate elections rather than something that you should set very much store by. But UKIP will continue. We've been campaigning for Brexit for 27 years now, and we're going to continue campaigning for it until it's delivered. And what is more, we have many other great policies besides Brexit. We're very worried about free speech and what's happening in this country with regard to that. We're concerned about excessive mass immigration. We're concerned about the growth of extremist Islam in the UK and elsewhere in Europe, and we're concerned about a lot of everyday issues that ordinary British people have to face. So, wage compression, for instance, competition for jobs, housing, schools, hospital places. So we're concerned about the real everyday politics that people in this country have to deal with. So those problems are not going to go away overnight just because the Brexit Party does well, if it does well, on Thursday. And by the way, there's a danger, of course, that Mr. Farage on Friday will resign, as he did after the referendum, and then have a 3-year unpaid holiday, and then start up a new party. And I suspect that I may have named the Brexit Party, and I've been lining up names for what his next party might be called. So we'll see. But certainly if fake Tory Brexit 2 arises, then he's going to need a new party, because he's going to have sullied the reputation of what is probably incorrectly called the Brexit Party.
You mentioned you've got lots of other policies, and you mentioned jobs, actually. I was going through your manifesto for the local elections, and I clicked on employment, and do you know what came up? It said, sorry, there are no policies at this time, check back soon.
Well, that was on a website, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can't speak for that. I mean, our policies on employment are in our manifesto, and they're very
well, not
clear.
in that one.
Well, okay, we actually have a printed, unitary manifesto. So I don't know what link you clicked.
And your manifesto for the European elections. I know you say the Brexit Party don't have a manifesto. This is your manifesto, and it's not very long, is it?
Well, it doesn't need to be. We have a very clear manifesto for our policies, and anybody can go to the website ukip.org and read them. And so the manifesto specifically for this election, which should not be occurring, and a really illegitimate election, obviously is short. It was called at short notice. We noticed that other parties don't have manifestos, and our position is very clear. It's the same strategy and the same plan that we've had for many, many years, which is that we must unilaterally declare that we have left the European Union by repealing the 1972 European Communities Act. And then we will be in a position to say to the European Union, do you wish to continue trading under current terms, or do you wish to switch to World Trade Organization terms, which work very well for us when we trade with the rest of the world?
Another question then from a viewer. This is Pascal Abisher from Exeter via email. What is UKIP's plan for how to mitigate the harm to the economy and to living standards from a no-deal Brexit? Which you support a no-deal Brexit, is that right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So the harm that would do to the economy, how would you mitigate that?
Well, I regard this question as being based on speculation. We were told before the Leave vote that a vote to leave by the UK would bring about this terrible recession and house crash, and there would need to be a punishment budget. And in fact, the last quarter we've had 0.5% growth. The UK economy is doing extremely well, and almost none of the things that were promised us by the doom mongers of Project Fear have come true. And I simply don't agree with this idea that true Brexit, leaving the European Union, is going to bring about unfavourable economic circumstances. I think we have a huge amount to gain when we're actually released from the European Union like a champagne cork, because the European Union has been damaging many economies across Europe, not just Britain. It's been damaging Greece, Italy, Spain, even France and Ireland. And it works okay for the Germans because they have an artificially soft currency. But for many other countries in Europe, it's been, frankly, a disaster. You have huge youth unemployment all across the south of Europe. And so I think that when we leave, we will actually have a Brexit boom. That's what I predict. I did predict that we would do well after the Leave vote, and it has happened. I know that there are many, many economists who don't say this, but economists exist to make astrologers look good.
A question about the Irish border, really. This is from JW Tweeter via Twitter. If there's one thing that Jeremy Corbyn, Theresa May, most MPs and the Irish Taoiseach agree on, it's that a hard Brexit may not just be economically disastrous, but could dishonour the country by breaking the Good Friday Agreement. Shouldn't we get a definitive legal opinion? What do you make of that?
Well, first of all, can you repeat the people that said that? You read three
Jeremy
names.
Corbyn, Theresa May, most MPs and the Irish Taoiseach.
Yes, well, for me, those are some of the most distrusted politicians in the world. And frankly, I'm not sure I would trust them to sit the right way on a lavatory seat.
But the question is about a return to a hard Irish...
But their view on that matter, I think, is utterly discredited by the lies that they have spouted for the last 3 years.
But do you not think there would be a problem with a return to a hard Irish border with a no-deal Brexit?
No, and in fact, don't forget that both the UK government and the Irish government have said that there would be no need for a hard border. So you say that, but that's not what they themselves have said. They did talk about problems with a hard border while they were trying to frighten people into switching to Remain after the referendum. But in fact, more recently, in the last 6 months, they have come to terms with it and recognised that there is no need for a hard border in Ireland, that we already have a VAT and currency border there and other kinds of border there. And so there's no reason actually to introduce large-scale infrastructure there. You can have a paper border, and that will work very well. And our economy is very closely tied in with the Republic of Ireland.
Okay.
And the real hard border, I'm afraid to say, is going to end up being the Channel, because our economy is so closely linked with the Republic of Ireland.
Philip Etheridge via email, is UKIP a far-right party?
No, absolutely not. This is a smear by the press to call us far right. And if you
Well, this is a viewer who's emailed
okay,
in.
understood, but he may read the press or he may not. But certainly recently far right has been used a great deal by establishment figures in the press, usually when talking about working class people and working class concerns.
Well, I think they're probably thinking about taking on controversial figures to the party as an advisor, like Tommy Robinson, former English Defence League leader.
Well, I challenge whoever thinks that Tommy Robinson is far right to find a single right-wing political opinion that he has ever uttered. Also look for, if you want to, go and look for a racist opinion that he's ever uttered, because the press constantly call him far right and racist. Left-wing agitators constantly call him far right and racist, but he is not. He is actually basically a moderate, liberal-minded
Well, people
person.
also wonder why you have Carl Benjamin standing as a candidate who tweeted that he wouldn't even rape the Labour MP Jess Phillips. Hugely controversial remarks, as you know.
He made a bad joke 3 years ago. Jess Phillips herself talked of the Cologne attacks, where more than 1,000 young women were attacked in Cologne, mostly by Muslim immigrants. And she said it was like a night out in Birmingham, and she thought that was funny. But in fact, there were, I think it was possibly as many as 1,400 victims of those attacks. So Carl Benjamin hasn't made a joke about
just to be clear,
about any crime that
are you
had a victim.
endorsing what he said when he said feminism is cancer, for example?
Well, I think that's a figure of speech, and he is expressing extremely negative attitudes to feminism.
Well, he's one of your candidates. What would you say about what he said
I
there?
think he's perfectly entitled to say that, and I think that he's perfectly entitled to express dissatisfaction with feminism, because, frankly, feminism has become an extremist pursuit these days.
Is that your party policy?
No, I don't think it's party policy. I'm talking about what Carl's views are on this, which you've brought up. So
no, but just to be clear, do you endorse his views or not?
I don't endorse them or not. He's free to say what he wants to say.
But sorry, you're here as a spokesman for UKIP. Surely you must have a view on what one of your candidates has said.
Sorry, that's not UKIP policy.
But I'm asking you whether you endorse what he said or not.
Whether I personally endorse it, I would say that there are obviously many examples where feminist agitation and extreme feminist politics has gone too far. And I think many people feel like that now. Equally, obviously, it was very, very important to ensure that women had equal rights, got suffrage. So, I'm a feminist in that sense, but I'm not a feminist in the sense that I agree with some of the more extreme things that are said and done these days in this country that, frankly, I think an awful lot of people viewing this are getting quite fed up with.
Last question. UKIP has said there'll be a leadership contest after these European elections. So how can voters kind of trust the party they're voting for if they do vote UKIP, if they don't even know who's going to be the leader?
Well, all parties have leadership contests, and it's remarkable that Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn have survived for so long when they're often so despised by so many people in their own parties. But those parties haven't found a means of democratically removing their unpopular leaders. Last year, UKIP did precisely that. We have a very democratic structure in our party, and if we don't like a leader, we're entitled to get rid of him, and we did get rid of the execrable Henry Bolton. But Gerard Batten said that he would stand in as an interim leader for a year. He's done so. He's done a fantastic job. He's very popular in the party, and our membership is growing fast. Funds are growing fast. So the party is in very, very good health now under his leadership. And he did promise that there would be a leadership election since he was an interim leader. And there will be that election. I sincerely hope that Gerard Batten stands in that election, because he's an excellent leader, and I will certainly be backing him fully and voting for him in that leadership contest, which is democratic.